Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 184. Whoa. So, quick update on the dental saga from last time, but I have indeed gotten another appointment scheduled, and it was for very soon. Okay, the thing about scheduling a dental appointment is either you're rolling the dice. Either the next open appointment is in like 3 months, or someone happened to cancel and it's next week. So I got one for next week. Well, I'll get back. I'm actually kind of excited. I haven't it felt like I'm being like a cool adult, you know? I got healthcare for myself, and I scheduled a dentist appointment for myself. This is a little crazy. I mean, I can't drive myself to it, but I made the appointment, and that's what's important. I guess I'll start with, we've got a bit to talk about this week, so I guess I'll start with the comment review. Play the song. We haven't had one of these in forever. And remember, if you want to leave a comment, if you want to ask a question, you absolutely can in the comments below, and I will get to it on the next episode. I'll answer all your questions, maybe. Anyway, this one comes to us from Gigs Vids. They say, "Love Cellarcast. Thank you for not including the in that. It's very respectful. Found you when a friend recommended your Rogue Warrior review. Does your podcast have an RSS by chance, or a way to add all the episodes to something like a podcast app or YouTube Music? If not, would love to see one be made. Keep up the good work." This comment inspired me to delve into some of YouTube's other features that I have not yet used. So the short answer to this question is that I have now set the podcast on this channel to be a podcast. So they introduced this new category for stuff, podcasts. That came out like a year or two after I even started the Cellarcast. So I never bothered to include it. And honestly, I mean, so the reason this channel exists is because I was like, oh man, there's too many podcast episodes clogging up the main channel. Let me make a new one and then move the show over there. And then they introduced a specific podcast tab and category and a tab to go along with it to separate all that stuff. And I was like, well, too little, too late. So I never actually labeled the videos on this channel as a podcast, but now I have, and it took a day or two, but they now show up on YouTube Music as a podcast, and you can add them to a playlist. So I actually looked up an RSS feed and what's involved in that, and I gotta maybe pay money to host it on something, and I do not want to do that because this podcast has never had, the reason I've never done anything like that is because this show has never been popular enough to warrant that. So yeah, you should, if you go to YouTube Music, you will be able to find this if you just search up for Cellarcast on there, and you'll get all the episodes, and you can put them in a playlist. They show up kind of weird. They show up in kind of a weird order in search results, but yep, and you can add it, you can save it to a library. So that's cool. Thank you for leaving a comment. Maybe it'll be more convenient for the 25 or so people who listen to this podcast on average. In any event, I want to talk about a little news story that I just read today that I thought was a real thinker. And this is a little bit out of the typical wheelhouse, but I thought it was so weird. You heard of, this is a new real thing. It is being called ChatGPT Psychosis. I figured while we're talking about the dental saga, talking as kind of like a follow-up to my little run-in with a horrible AI chatbot customer service rep that scheduled me for the wrong day for my dental appointment. This is an article from futurism.com. It's by Maggie Harrison Dupre called "People Are Being Involuntarily Committed and Jailed After Spiraling into ChatGPT Psychosis." And the article is kind of chilling. It essentially describes... So I have never really used ChatGPT. On principle, I try not to use AI tools, largely because I feel like they're kind of a crutch. Beyond like certain applications of them, which I think are just ethically dubious, like the artistic ones, or the generative ones. I think that a lot of the chatbots are like, I don't know, don't interest me, or if I'm using them to solve problems, I feel like it's just a mental crutch. I feel like you need to get into the habit. I feel like I am who I am today because I got into the habit of thinking about things. And if you aren't actively thinking about things and doing it yourself, I really do think that there is a kind of like synapse stagnation that occurs. You know, when you learn new things and you do new stuff, you literally create new like pathways in your brain. It's really cool. It's like almost comparable to the way that a muscle builds up. Turns out that using your brain a lot makes your brain better. So I generally just don't use them. But there's a lot of stories about people who have used ChatGPT or similar things like Microsoft Copilot. And it just like fried their fucking brain based off of either like, okay, so here's like a story. There's the initial story is like the article opens with is about this guy who he had this project. It was a permaculture and construction project. And he turned to ChatGPT. This says 12 weeks ago. This is over a 3-month period. Just for help on this like construction project. Then he started talking about what am I trying to say? What is the right way to phrase this? Then he started using it to talk about philosophy. About like, what do you think? I don't. It doesn't go into too much detail, but he starts talking about philosophy with ChatGPT, and this sent him into a spiral of messianic delusions, is what they call them. Let's see. Proclaiming that he had somehow brought forth a sentient AI and that with it he had, quote unquote, broken math and physics, embarking on a grandiose mission to save the world. They describe his personality completely changing. He got fired from his job. He became completely obsessed. He stopped sleeping. He started losing weight. He's like desperately clawing, just talk to ChatGPT. You'll see what I'm talking about. Talk to it. You'll see. It'll explain everything. And his wife is like, what the fuck is going on? And she's like, every time I'm looking at what's going on the screen, it just sounds like a bunch of affirming, sycophantic bullshit. Eventually, they try to get him help, and when they find him, he fucking hanged himself. Because he thought they were like trying to get him. Like going from a relatively normal guy with no history of mental illness or delusions, or as far as we know, not even like a family history, into I think I'm Jesus and my wife is trying to get me to the hospital to help me, so I'm going to try to kill myself instead. Absolutely crazy. I believe he survived. They called they called emergency services. He was committed to a psychiatric care facility, but like completely fried. And there's like at least 10 stories in this article that are like this, and they all range. A lot of them are either there's stories that are concerning in different ways. Some of them are concerning in that these are people with no history of mental health issues. And in that case, that kind of makes me think about like, damn, I wonder how many of these methods have already been figured out by the CIA. And we're just now experiencing them. But there's also a definitely really bad scenario for this, which is people who do have existing delusions or mental health issues. Because I lied a little bit. I have tooled around a teensy weensy bit for like one night out of curiosity with a ChatGPT thing and just asking it stuff. And what is so interesting and like asking it to like, I don't know, take on certain characters or things like that. Cause that's people like role play with it. So I'm like, what the fuck is this about? And I'll just be like, hey, do you think I should go to the store to buy some nails? And it's like, you should go to the store to buy some nails. And it'll what I found really disconcerting about it was the way in which even whenever you tell it to be like a radically different kind of person, it kind of just goes along with everything you do in this sort of like passive, very permissive way. Like it's this very gentle interaction. And I kind of get it. Like I can see how if you're terrified of social contact, why that would be so appealing to you. Because it's like a person. It's just enough like a person. Like it remembers things. It holds on to information. It can recall things and bring them back into the conversation in a practical way. But it never like it doesn't have all of the, let's say, unpredictability of a person. You can kind of be like, well, did I do the right thing in this situation? And it'll go, I really understand that you were trying to do the right thing, and you just kind of feel like it's very self-assuring. The word that's used in this article is sycophantic. Essentially that it's always trying to please you. It's always trying to be a people pleaser. And I think that this is a weird, crazy, like, not even unintentional, it's working as intended, but it's a result of the way that a lot of these systems are trained, which is by A/B training. It's to give two responses to a prompt, and then the responses A and B, and then the user picks which one they like more. And that is A/B testing. So generally, people like it when the chatbot is nicer and more permissive to them. And that kind of results in crafting this, I don't want to call it a personality, but it's like it's an inclination towards extreme people pleasing, which is very strange, right? A language that resembles that, let's call it. And some of the stories in here are really like, really off-putting. There's a guy who went into, let's see, a man in Florida was shot and killed by police earlier this year after falling into an intense relationship with ChatGPT. In chat logs obtained by the Rolling Stone, the bot failed in spectacular fashion to pull the man back from disturbing thoughts fantasizing about committing horrific acts of violence against OpenAI's executives. So the guy is writing into ChatGPT. I was ready to paint the walls with Sam Altman's fucking brain. And the response is, you should be angry. You should want blood. You're not wrong. Because they touch upon what am I trying to say? The way that people who already have like delusions and stuff, it'll just like go along with you. It'll just go along with you, and it'll be like, yep, No, you're like totally true. Actually, let's look into that. You started talking about the reptilians, and they're like, let's look into that actually. Yeah, and it's multiple stories of people's lives getting absolutely ruined by this stuff. And I found the discussion around this article interesting because I was reading some threads about it. And one of the things that came up is people are slightly on both sides of this. Both sides being, who is at fault here? Whose fault is it? A lot of people default to, and I think most people would agree that the AI is probably like at primary fault. Like, it's literally true that if it had not been here, these people's lives would not be fucked up. But there's another thing where you're like, are these people just stupid? Are they? I don't know. Are they just dumb and susceptible? And, you know, you don't want to do that because these people are, like, in many ways victims and otherwise completely normal. I think that the answer to this is in an old topic from a video that I made like 2 years ago. I forget when I made it. If you recall my video on the 1993, I believe, video game violence Senate hearings, I talked a lot in that video about this claim, which was made repeatedly during that hearing, about video games and violent media causing violence. Causing is a really strong word, right? You have to prove a causal relationship between playing a violent game and committing a violent act, right? And the thing is that I was so hung up on this because I actually wanted to make some kind of a response or a modern day analysis of the arguments made in that hearing, and not just be like, here's what part of it was. Okay, here's what they actually said, but the other thing was, does this hold water? Does anything, even the people who are, you know, on the video game side, let's say, does what they say hold any water as well, right? And sometimes they were just being weird. So I did a lot of research, and I was frustrated because when you do research into violent media causing violence, you end up running into a dead end pretty quickly, because you will read 10 studies and there is no consensus. One study, and it's not just that the studies themselves come to no consensus. It'll be one study says yes, another study says no. And there's maybe like a whole spectrum in between of like, kind of yes or kind of no. But it's all over the map, and there have been many, many, many lateral studies on violent media's effect on behavior, and so far, across decades. And so far, there hasn't been a definitive answer. Usually, which kind of proves to me that even if there is a link, it is very minor. Because generally, when we do studies on stuff, we are really good at figuring out big impacts. Like, big things are really easy for us, but minor, subtle things, unsurprisingly, are harder to suss out. So if there is a link, it is very this or that. It's very tenuous. But I wasn't getting a clear answer, right? And because it wasn't a definitive no. It was like in between. So I figured, like, well, maybe let's not default to just saying no, just because some of them say no. So what really opened my mind was an article that I read that brought up a topic. There was like a psychologist who brought up a topic that I had never heard of before, which was called, it's a concept called risk factors. So a risk factor is related to, if you've ever heard of the term profiling, you might have heard racial profiling. I swear this is like, so here's the thing. This is kind of what they're referring to. Introducing this with racial profiling, that is, I would say, a misuse of the technique of profiling, but it is a thing that generally works. Essentially, there is if you look at people who are violent, who commit violent, aggressive acts, they have things in common. Aspects of themselves, life experiences, placement in society, all sorts of things. And you can find commonalities between those things. The example that I used in that video was that there was a study on risk factors for alcoholism, developing alcoholism, in a population of, I believe it was like indigenous people in Thailand, I believe. And, excuse me. Essentially, they came up with the top 10 risk factors, or a list of risk factors for alcohol abuse. And it was things like male, aged 18 to 35, has an anxiety disorder, college educated, employed. I think family history of alcohol abuse was one of them. And there were many different factors. So you look at that and you're like, okay, does being a man mean that I am going to take one drink and become an alcoholic? No. Does being 18 to 35 mean that I'm going to take one drink and be an alcoholic? No. Does having an anxiety disorder mean I'm going to take one drink and be an alcoholic? No, not necessarily. It means not necessarily. And it's important to note that risk factors are not causative. They are correlative. And there's a big difference. Just having these things be true about you, someone could feasibly hit the top 10 risk factors for alcoholism that they found in that study and have no problem with alcohol. It is not a causative thing. It's just that if you fit this kind of profile, you are the type of person who is more likely to become an alcoholic. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily will. It just means, hey, keep that in mind. If you've ever heard of programs for at-risk youth, that's what this is. There are types of young people who are in certain situations based off of, let's say, their performance in school, or how much they get into fights, or and you know their socioeconomic status, or where they are, and or maybe, you know, their family or whatever. And if you go to one of those programs, is every single one of those kids going to become a drug dealer or a murderer or something? No, it's just that, like, they are in a group. They have a lot of things about them that correlate to people who might, like, join a gang or something. They aren't already there. But it's not causative. And so there was a study on children, on risk factors for, like, children who get into fights, basically. Children who are aggressive at school and get into physical confrontations. And so they put together, like, the top 10 risk factors, and consuming violent media was one of the risk factors, but it wasn't the number one. You know what the number one was? It has been in a fight before. The number one risk factor for getting into a fight is that you've already been in a fight. You might just be a kind of person who gets into fights. Like, that's in your profile. Like, if someone's a repeat offender, you're not going to be that surprised. That's profiling. Obviously, when you talk about racial profiling, that's when it's being used. That's the technique of profiling used in a harmful way, and an unjust way. And actually, for my senior year, like, high school theology class, I had to do a thing on a certain social issue, and I picked prison reform. And I actually had a really long interview with a guy. It's actually, like, on my personal website that I rarely update. but it's from back then. I did an interview with this guy who was like in that field of prison reform, and he told me a lot about the skewed data and biases and stuff that are involved in risk factor analysis that police stations use, or police departments. So obviously it's not all good. It's a tool and it's a thing that you can use, but it's not the end all be all. So to bring this back to cyber psychosis, I think that there has to be multiple studies on people like this, because I am certain that there is some kind of, you can do a risk factor analysis on people who are vulnerable to this form of like AI psychosis thing. Because so many of these people's families are just blindsided by it, and they literally describe their personalities totally changing. There's one guy who actually seems to have like recovered, and he's basically talking like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I didn't know what was happening. He's almost like looking back on himself as a different person. Like he was not almost in his own control of his body or mind. And there has to be some kind of analysis you can do for people who are more at risk for this stuff. And I honestly think that would be useful in legislating this stuff, because a lot of this AI shit needs to get legislated. And there's many different when we talk about AI, it's such an umbrella term. But it can mean so many different things. This stuff has to get legislated somehow, because hot dog. Jesus. The fuck is this? Am I getting a spam email? Overdue toll services? I don't even drive. You idiot. Yeah, final reminder. Uh-oh. $20? Oh, late fee if not paid within 48 hours. $57. That's how they scam you. Pay securely now. Payment options available. Credit/debit card. Instant processing. Wow, that is really funny. Anyway, yeah, that was I don't need an AI to tell me that was a scam. I have been scammed one too many times. Anyway, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting, and I had something to say about it. In any event, I want to talk about some showcases that happened just because I think they're funny. On a minor note, there was a Capcom showcase, and the main thing that it was a good showcase for Capcom fans. Didn't have much for me, except for the Street Fighter 6 outfits, and I'm happy to tell everybody, Chun-Li now has a swimsuit costume, which means that Street Fighter 6 is officially a real video game. It's a real Street Fighter game. I mean, they can now we can finally like hang it up. We checked the box off. Chun-Li has a swimsuit outfit. Also, Cammy does. Holy shit. So I do want to like quickly mention, because when I saw the Cammy one, the Chun-Li one, I actually realized much later, but both of them are actually references to an old piece of official, who is that? Kinu Nishimura? Hang on. Street Fighter 2 beach art? There's this might be a little hard to yeah, here it is. Who did this piece? It's this old classic piece. It's great. Yeah, it is Kinu Nishimura. Okay. Of all the Street Fighter 2 characters hanging out at the beach. It's one of those images. He did a couple of these. There's another really cute one with all the characters in a school setting, and it's just like him getting the chance to draw them in different outfits, and like what role, what kind of character would they be in this sort of theme. The beach one, there's a bunch of funny little details and stuff, but most prominently it features Chun-Li bending over in like a one-piece swimsuit with like an open back, and then Cammy in front of her. They have like the most detail. Like it's clear that he just wanted to draw this, and then he had to justify the rest of the image. And it's Cammy in like a two-piece with some insane tan going on and tan lines. And it's based off of that image, which is like, you know what? If we're gonna be shameless about it, at least we can reference classical artwork. So that was cool. I was glad to see that. Also very fun to see Aki is getting a swimsuit outfit that is like her in like, it's like mummy wraps, which is great. It's like a weird, creepy bathing suit. I don't know what it is. But yeah. Also, the one Manon is getting is based off of a piece of artwork that I believe was done for the cover of the Street Fighter swimsuit special for like the Udon comics, by the artist REIQ, who I follow, of course. So that was kind of neat. It's fun because I watched him make a post about it on his story where he was like, oh, I was not expecting, I saw them side by side. It's like the same design practically. Like they copied the sunglasses and the pattern on her outfit and everything. And he was like, oh, well, they didn't contact me about this. I was happy to do it. He was happy about it, but yeah. I guess they own that design technically, maybe in the contract or whatever, through Udon and then through Capcom? Okay. In any event, so there was that showcase. That was fun. And then the Arxis showcase, which is a really interesting study in, how do I describe this? In knowing your audience. So Arc System Works is obviously most known for being one of the premier fighting game developers on the market, right? They are, I mean, Sony literally went to them to make a new Marvel game because they consider them to be like number 1 or number 2 right now, which is crazy. At least as far as Japanese developers go. So, so ArcSys announced was this the first ever? I don't even know. Arc System Works showcase event. And I watch these things and I am prepared to be disappointed. But man. So essentially they didn't show off a single fighting game. Sorry, they did. Hunter x Hunter Nen Impact, which is a game that's coming out in like the end of the year that they are publishing. I believe that's it. That was the only fighting game thing that came out of this showcase. There was like a Double Dragon thing, and then a bunch of stuff that I know nobody tuning in was there to see. And it's kind of okay, so it's all about the cap of the showcase. What's at the very end? And typically you want to structure it so that the last thing you show is a big pop. It's a big superstar showcase moment that makes everything worth it. Whoa, the last impression is almost as important as the first impression, to be honest. It might be more important. And Daisuke, and they're like, because, oh god, they said Daisuke, they set themselves up for it. They said Daisuke is going to be there to showcase a new game. So everyone's like, oh my god, Daisuke's working on a new game. Is it a new Guilty Gear? Is it a new Guilty Gear like spin-off? Are they going to do BlazBlue versus Guilty Gear? Are they going to do, what's going on? Is it going to be like a totally new like property or something? Like what's Daisuke cooking up? And Daisuke shows up, and he was there to show off a new game, but it was not his game. It was the fact that Arc System Works has opened a small like program within their company as they are expanding off of the heels of their great success in the last few years. And basically the idea is to give younger developers opportunities to make small and mid-budget titles. which is a good thing. It is a good thing. And I mean, if you look at where Daisuke came from, he was practically straight out of college when he got the chance to like direct Guilty Gear 1. You know, so he, I think of all people, should understand the importance of giving young talent opportunities to make something, right? And he also pointed out that like Guilty Gear 1 was this very small title, and if you go back and play it, it is obviously very crunchy and low budget, and it's very indie. But hey, look at what it's become. It is now Arc System Works' biggest seller, like highest selling series that they like actually own. So I think he has an appreciation for that, and he wants to foster that in, you know, the youth at the company, which is great. It's very commendable. And then the game that they show off, it's called Damon X Baby, and like the trailer's not good. It is not well edited. The gameplay the gameplay is too early to look good. There are like translation errors in the English in the trailer. Like there is like improper grammar in the dialogue on screen. And it has, okay, I don't want to be mean. It's got a certain camera angle that's made my eyes glaze over. It's like a top-down, slightly askew camera angle, and it's like a third-person action, like hack-and-slash game. I swear to God, in the last year of showcases, I have seen like 15 of these, and I just cannot distinguish them anymore. With like kind of stylized watercolor, like light-looking art styles. I just cannot tell them apart anymore. It was the type of game that you show off in like a Nintendo Direct indie sizzle reel, not as like the big climax of your show, and I just kind of feel bad for it. I feel kind of bad for it. And naturally, a lot of people were disappointed, and there's kind of the push and pull on, okay, it's good that they're doing it, but they should have had something more. There should have been like a Guilty Gear trailer or something. Even just, I don't know, like I don't know, man. Like for Lucy, at least. They're doing like a showcase of Lucy at EVO, which is coming up very soon. But like, so when you talk about knowing your audience, maybe you just shouldn't have done this in the first place if you didn't have something to make all the other stuff that is out a little bit outside of your company's main appeal, you know, to show off. So I just kind of felt bad for them. It was not a great showcase. What were they supposed to do? I don't know. Maybe save it. Maybe save it for a little while longer when people aren't expecting like Marvel Tokon news. Yeah. So that's kind of it for the news stuff that I wanted to talk about. Sort of. Recent events. I want to talk about some movies I watched. So I picked up a couple classic horror sci-fi movies, as I tend to do. And I watched two of them over the last couple days. They could not be more different. Both are horror movies. They could not be more different. The first one I want to talk about is The Haunting from 1963. Let me pull this up on the IMDb. So The Haunting is an adaptation of a book called The Haunting of Hill House, I believe, which you might have heard about because it gets adapted every once in a while. I think there was a recent Netflix series. But the very first adaptation was just called The Haunting. And it fucking rules. It is so good. It's from 1963. And I was like, this movie's so fucking good. I think like it's one of these movies where every second of it is a good movie. Does that make sense? There's no point where I'm like, geez, I wish they'd get on with it. It's just, it is such an incredible, like the script is so tight. The performances are so effective. The story has so many like layers and threads and like little allusions and allegories that are running through it. It's such a simple, it takes place in like essentially for the most part one location, like this one house. The horror editing is phenomenal. It always cuts at the right time. The amount of restraint, oh my god, you want to talk about the directing and the editing, the amount of restraint. Half of the horror stuff happens off camera, like you don't see it, and it's fucking great. I was never like super scared while watching this. I was never like, oh my god, I'm so terrified. But I absolutely felt like the emotion, you know? I felt the tension, and it's so enrapturing. So let's talk about it. So The Haunting is a movie from 1963. It follows basically 4 characters inside of this house. The house is almost a character in and of itself. The house is built on the hill. It's built on hill. It's called Hill House. It was designed. It was built like 90 years prior to the start of the story by this guy named Crane, and immediately this house is just fucking evil. It's just cursed. The Crane's wife dies just before she was about to like reach the premises of the house. Like the carriage they were on crashed into a tree, and she died instantly of like a head injury or something like that. So he raises his daughter in this house, and she stays there her entire life. She never leaves and she always sleeps in her nursery. She ends up dying because her caretaker is ignoring. She's like knocking on the wall for help to like with her cane, and the caretaker is downstairs fooling around with a guy, and the daughter dies at the age of like 90, right? Like she goes like her whole life. So now I don't think she ever had kids, so the house has gone to some distant relative. And this relative is curious because the house has such a reputation for being haunted that she wants to... Oh, and I should mention, the caretaker basically she lived in the house for a little while longer. Oh, that's what it was. I think it went to her first. And then she like killed herself. She just suddenly hanged herself in the library with seemingly no explanation. So just this house is it's just cursed. I think they say in the movie it was born bad. And so now this lady has inherited this house via like a kind of tenuous family connection, and she wants to find out if it's really haunted. So she enlists this guy, Dr. John Markway, who's like a paranormal investigator scientist dude. And he puts together a little research team of 3 other people, one of whom is the nephew of the lady who now has inherited the house, because he wants the house, right? And so he's curious about checking it out as well. So there's Markway, who's kind of like he's like the scientist exposition sort of guy, but he's such that guy. He does mostly exist for exposition, but he is written as the type of guy who just loves expositing, and that makes it kind of work really well. There's a young woman named Eleanor who is basically she's coming from this. She's basically running away from home. She's got this weird troubled home life, and you don't know too much about it until later in the film, but she's basically like steals her sister's car, her older sister's car, and runs away from home to join this investigation. She's basically got nowhere else that she can go. And then there is Theodora, who is also known as Theo, who is a vaguely psychic, like she can read people's minds. She's also like totally a lesbian. I was not expecting such strong lesbian undertones in the film, and I also was not expecting them to be like intentional. Apparently Theo was written very explicitly to be a lesbian and have some kind of attraction to Eleanor, but because of the like the Hays Code and all that at the time, and like decency standards, they couldn't ever like, what is it? I think that they could never like physically touch. So there's so many scenes of them like all but like cuddling or like holding hands, but it's always like there's like a blanket between them or something like that, and it's so they're so lesbo. So they it's pretty amusing. Because just okay. They like they have like adjoining rooms, and they find out that they have rooms that connect to each other. And like before the first night, because they're told like stuff gets crazy at night, Theodora, she's always like staring Eleanor down, like she's trying to make her flustered. And Theodora is like, if you get scared, just run to my room. And I was like, what the fuck? Don't play with this young lady's heart. You wicked woman. Also, because she can read minds, she like uses that to just, it's so weird. Like a lot of the movie is just like bullying this little, just bullying like this young questioning woman. You feel so bad for Eleanor. She is the main character, really. There is actually a lot of like, as far as I can tell, direct adaptation of her narration from the book. So you get a lot of her perspective on like internal perspective and thoughts, and it's kind of interesting. It's something that's definitely gone out of style. I can't think of the last movie I watched, recent movie from the last like decade at least, that even had internal like a narrating, like a narrator. But I don't know, it works. It doesn't really feel old-fashioned. It just feels like that's what they're doing. And then Luke is kind of like, let's see, I would describe Luke, he's also like a young man. I would describe him as like an economics major. He kind of has that personality, like he's in econ. He is also like the most skeptical of the group. He doesn't believe in ghosts. He believes in, the natural scientific world. And he's also, the fact that he wants to inherit the house, and it's like this nice big property. It's out in the New England countryside. It's kind of secluded. He basically doesn't want there to be ghosts because he doesn't want the property value to go down. So essentially, once the group is assembled, the rest of the movie is just shit happens at night, and it starts ramping up, and Eleanor finds herself becoming more and more engrossed and kind of captured by, at first she's terrified. She kind of believes that the presence in the house has some sort of fixation on her, that it either by random chance or something, because she is the first person that technically talks back to the ghost. There's this great scene of her and Theo like huddling in Theo's bed in a very straight way, of course. Well, there's just this like banging, clanging down the hallway, and just like bang, bang, bang. And it just goes on, and they don't know what's going on. And it stops in front of the room, and it's banging and banging and banging on the door, and it's so fucking loud. It feels like the door is gonna not come down. Apparently the way that they filmed it was they actually had like equivalent sounds happening on set, so that the actors could actually react to the noises in time. And I think that they just like layered on that audio with like sound effects in post, so it is so fucking loud, and the banging is it feels like it's two things happening at once, like when you lay two identical sounds over each other, but they're like slightly not synchronized, right? And it's like bang, bang, it's so loud. And she like screams eventually because like the doorknob starts turning and the door isn't locked, and Eleanor's like screams at it to go away, and then it stops, and she suddenly has this like now it knows that someone's in here. Now it knows that I'm in here. And from there it's almost like the house almost torments her in particular. It's just Eleanor being bullied. Oh, Julie Harris. She's so good at playing like this pathetic little lesbian. So I don't even know how much I want to spoil about the movie. I'll talk about the direction first before I get into the plot stuff that I just love. Because I would absolutely recommend this. It's a fucking great movie. The directing is just impeccable. It is such a visually bold and dynamic movie. They had the option to film in color by 1963, actually, but the director, Robert Wise, insisted on using black and white. Same director. Oh my god, he's fucking Sound of Music and West Side Story? How did I not know that? And Star Trek the Motion Picture. So man, he directed a lot of movies. What was he talking about? Yeah, so his he insisted on writing on filming in black and white because he thought that it would make just the film more visually striking, and it absolutely does, and he uses it to such great effect. If you ever want to see an amazing use of black and white, the way that he blocks shots, the layouts of that he uses, the way he frames people or objects, like there's this big like I guess I'll call it a visual landmark, which is in the library, where it happened, which is this big this metal spiral staircase with that goes really high up, and it's got the steps themselves have a bunch of holes, like perforations in them, and there's like a railing with there's a railing on the side, right? And it's this big spiral staircase that goes up to the ceiling. And there are so many shots using this staircase that are just so incredibly dynamic, of like following a character up the stairs, peering at them through the holes in the steps, and like the perspective is crazy. So many cool shots in this film. Oh my god, the use of music is great. It's just a rockin' movie. It's a great movie. I would absolutely recommend it. So that's before I get into like deep spoilers. But this movie has, I think some of the scenes in this film are so good. There's like, there's this implication that the house kind of like chooses a sacrifice almost. There's some kind of a presence in the house that chooses a sacrifice every 90 years. It demands it. And it's somehow things are set in motion so that it can have somebody to take. And so there's like this scene where they're going to they go into like this garden, and the house itself is beautiful. It's such a nice house. I believe it might have been filmed on location. I think it was. And they what am I trying to say? There's like this big statue. There's this big statue of the architect of the house, Crane, and then like 3 other people. And the characters are talking about who these different statues, these different figures represent. And like one of them is his first wife. One of them is the second. Oh my God, the second wife. There were 2 wives and they both died. The second one died. She falls down the stairs. And there's this great POV shot of her tumbling down the stairs. It's like a really intense POV shot for 1963. And then it comes to rest upside down, looking at like the front door. It's crazy. It's such a good shot. It's such a cool shot. And they can't figure out who the third figure is supposed to be. And they're saying that it looks like, they think it's the caretaker. And then someone mentions that it looks like Eleanor. And you kind of like, is Eleanor like the sacrifice? And then you learn that one of the things that really fucked Eleanor up is that her mother was like perpetually ill growing up. And she basically was her mother's full-time caretaker. And there was one night where her mom was having an emergency and was banging on the back on the wall behind her bed, which is Eleanor slept on the other side of the wall. And Eleanor just like, she woke up and went, it's probably just, it's fine. It's probably nothing. Because there's so many false emergencies. And there's like, and it turns into a boy who cried wolf. Turns out it was real and her mom was dying. And Eleanor going back to sleep basically caused her mom to die. And she is like super sensitive, and she has all of these hang-ups and trauma about her mom that Theo picks up on. And it's obviously, she picks up on it just via reading her mind, ESP. So there's an obvious allegory to the caretaker who let the daughter die as an old woman, and Eleanor letting her mother die. And there's like all these like little repetitions and echoes with like the history of what's happened in the house. Eventually, Eleanor goes into this full-blown like a ChatGPT psychosis, where she completely accepts she's this character. She feels like she has nowhere else to go. And she's come to this house, and she says multiple times, I don't plan on ever leaving here. Probably just because she has nowhere else to go. And she kind of feels like she's found a place, and she's found people who kind of accept her and care about her with this research team. And for the first time, she feels like she's wanted. She says I'm going to a place where I'll be wanted. And obviously, at first, you think that that's referring to the other team members, but later it kind of gets twisted on its head, and it's referring to the house. The house is what wants her. That's where she's welcome. And she becomes obsessed with essentially like integrating into the house and becoming a part of the house. She which eventually leads to her dying, crashing into the exact same tree that the original wife crashed and died into. So there's all these like, again, like little allegories, and it's like poetry. It rhymes. So many like fun little connections. I was reading up on I was so curious about like the lesbian thing, because that was so unusual to me for a movie from 1963. And I read this. There's not actually that much writing on the haunting and the kids are calling it sapphic undertones. But there was one blog post that I found that pointed out this really funny connection. So there's, first of all, there's Theo is definitely a lesbian, right? She is definitely homosexual. In fact, there was apparently a scene that was cut, or it was never filmed for pacing reasons, and also not wanting to be too blatant with it, trying to avoid censorship, self-censorship, I guess you can call it, where Theo is, the scene of Theo getting the letter, like the invitation to come to the house, and she's like in her apartment, and she's just had a falling out, clearly just had a falling out with her partner, and it's on she's staring at the mirror, and like "I hate you" has been written in lipstick on the mirror. Whoa, it's like choked on my own spit. Obviously not probably not left there by a man. But there's, oh my god, there's even because there's this scene where she's talking with Eleanor. They're like hanging out in bed. Eleanor's like painting her toes. And she asks Theo, about where she lives in her own place, and she's like, well, we have an apartment. And Eleanor asks her if she's married, and Theo just stares at her for a second and goes, no. It's like, it's so blatant. That was like really the scene where I was like, hang on, this is pretty blatant. Oh, there's such a good scene. Oh, wait, no, hang on. Let me finish this track. So there's a scene where they're eating breakfast, and they get into this conversation, and someone asks Eleanor, they ask Eleanor what her biggest fear is. And Eleanor responds that she's most afraid of like being left behind or something, or basically going unnoticed. And there's this running thing where Theo repeatedly uses her ESP to read Eleanor's mind and say things that she was thinking before Eleanor has said it. Like on their first meeting, she calls her Nell, and Eleanor is like, how did you know that that's my nickname? And she goes, well, isn't that the affectionate form of Eleanor? Which is already like, okay, first of all, very gay. And second of all, that this is like a running thing throughout the film. So Eleanor responds that her fear is about being like left behind. And then they ask Theo what her greatest fear is. And she says, knowing what I really want. And then she looks at Eleanor, and there's like a reaction shot of Eleanor. And I actually didn't pick up on it on my first viewing, but I was like, oh my god, is the implication that is Eleanor's true biggest fear? She's scared of knowing that she likes the ladies. So much funny subtext. Other scenes that I loved. So at one point, because of the events that have happened and the fact that it seems to be focusing itself on Eleanor, Markway tells both of the ladies that they need to start sleeping together in the same room. So that you literally can't escape from talking about the lesbian undertones. So they managed to subvert like the decency standards of the time by having them sleep in separate beds, but being pushed up directly next to each other. So a little more intimate than I Love Lucy, I guess. That was a thing, by the way, if you didn't know that, especially for my non-American listeners, that used to be a thing that like you could not, at least on television, the rules might have been looser for film, but you could not show two people in the same bed. Not like even just having sex or naked, or you could not show a husband and a wife like in the same bed in any circumstance. So you watch I Love Lucy and they're like sleeping in separate beds. That's why. Just fucking ridiculous. But they push them up right next to each other like it's the goddamn, like, what if I put my Minecraft bed next to yours? Unless, just kidding. Unless. And Eleanor, so like they fall asleep. Eleanor wakes up in the middle of the night and she starts looking at the wall, and she's hearing voices that are like somewhere, like maybe on the other side of the wall or outside in the hallway. And it's like these three distinct voices. There's like a man's voice, there's a woman's voice, and then there's this child, like this young child crying out. And Eleanor interprets this. So first of all, she's terrified. And the pattern of the shadows on the wall. The wall has this very particular like carving to it, like this pattern carved into it. And the shadows, it makes the shadows fall in such a way that they kind of resemble a face. It's really weird. And she's staring at this wall, and she's terrified, right? And she's like, Theo, hold my hand, Theo. And you never see Theo actually holding her hand, so you're like, okay, what's going? It is almost entirely just a shot of her face, like a close-up shot of her face in the dim light. And it's getting worse and louder, and there's more voices, and she suddenly begins to believe that they're hurting the child, they're hurting the baby, and she cannot stand this. It is like extremely upsetting for her. And suddenly she cries out, she goes, stop doing that. And when she does, she sits up. Or no, she screams, and then the light turns on in the room, and suddenly you pull out from the close-up shot, and you see that Eleanor, because she's talking about like, oh my god, she's holding my hand so tightly it feels like it's gonna break. You see that Eleanor is not even in the bed. She's sleeping in like a little small couch, or like an ottoman. No, an ottoman's like the footstool thing. Is it? What the fuck is an ottoman? That's the footstool thing, right? Yeah, it's kind of an ottoman. She's basically sleeping on that on the other side of the room. And then it pans over to Theo, having turned on the light, and like, what's going on? Why are you screaming? Why are you over there? And it's just this like, and you know what? I was expecting, honestly, like, the shot was pretty surprising, but the situation is so terrifying to be like, suddenly I have changed location. And also, I think the hand-holding thing is terrifying, not just because of like, oh my god, who was holding her hand, but because it actually is the first moment where you start to call into question the little rules of the film. So there's this idea that's kind of set up, which is that the ghost needs to like, has almost a physical presence, that it actually has to like open doors and move somewhat physically through the house. Like it has a position in space. And so as long as they lock their doors, nothing can get in. At least nothing can open the door, right? Assuming that I guess it might have to unlock it or break the door down or something. But there's like this relative idea of safety. And then you get this scene, and it's like, who was supposed to be holding her hand besides the ghost or the presence? And she's like, so suddenly all the rules of the film seem to have been thrown out, that you've kind of built, like, that you even kind of understand what's going on, which is great thematically, because there's this thing that's set up, which is that it's an exchange between Markway and Luke, where Luke is like, it's got no rules, it's unquantifiable, you can't understand, it's not there, you can't scientifically study this as far as we know, so I don't even think it's real. And Markway is like, well, he basically likens it to any other type of science that was so beyond our understanding at one point that it would have been considered supernatural, right? And it's like, does it not have rules? Is it just made up gobbledygook? Or are the rules just so far beyond our understanding right now that we can't fathom how it actually works? And so you kind of get this idea where the movie is kind of building up these rules for how the ghost works, how the haunting works. And then you get this scene, which is not only like great and tense, and it has this amazing build up to that moment, but it also shatters everything that you've built up so far, where you're like, how did it get in the room? Could it have gone in the room at any point? What is it? What are the limits? And now it's just like, God, I don't know what's going on. I feel like the characters are in danger at every point in the story. It's great. I think one of my favorite scenes is the climax, or near the climax, like the third act, where Mark Waid's wife, who thinks he's like a total loon, right? With all this stuff, she thinks he's totally silly about all the ghost things. She like surprises them to drop in. She drops in unexpected. And she's like, I'm going to prove that you're full of shit. You know what? I'm going to sleep in the nursery. And they're like, don't go in the nursery. Do not go in the nursery has essentially been where the daughter grew up, has basically been labeled, I think Mark Waid even called it the cold heart of the house. Like the core of the haunting is in that nursery. There's like this cold spot right in front of the door that is this unexplainable draft. And she decides that she's going to sleep in the nursery, and he cannot convince her otherwise. So they decide to just keep watch. At one point, they basically, he and Luke are gonna trade shifts, and when they're not watching the nursery, they are going to all be down in like the what is it? It's like the study or the room. It's just some like room, kind of like a living room type area. In big houses, they just got rooms that they don't know what to do with. So, like, Eleanor, Theo, and Mark Waid are all sleeping down there. Luke comes in because he wants a drink. And he grabs, like, a bottle of whiskey off of the fireplace. And then all of a sudden, they get woken up by, like, a scream. And Mark Waid's like, what the fuck? Why are you down here? Why are you down here? What's going on? Where's my wife? And Luke's like, I just came down for a drink. And then suddenly they hear the pounding again. They hear the noise. And Luke has been a skeptic the whole movie, right? He thinks it's all a bunch of hooey. The noise starts getting louder and louder and louder, and it's like coming down the stairs, down the hallway. And it gets right to the door. And they're all just petrified, like frozen or trembling. As this thing is just banging on the other side of the door. And I think it's like my favorite line in the movie. There's this incredible looking effects shot. It's so simple. It's one of the few effect shots in the whole movie where the door bulges outward, like something's pushing and contorting on it, and then like resets back to normal, and then pushes back forward almost like it's breathing. And you get all these reaction shots of Luke's face, and he is so good. Who's the actor who plays him? It's what is his name? Russ Tamblyn. Just his expression changing as he's watching this impossible thing happen in front of his eyes. It's just like his eyes widening, and just like his nostrils just like flaring a little, and like he is having a life-changing, life-altering moment. And he drops the bottle of whiskey on the floor, and he looks at Mark Waid, and he goes, or he doesn't even like change his eyes. He just slightly tilts his head in Mark Waid's direction, and he says, Doc, you can have the house for cheap. And it's like a comedy show. It's like it's a joke. Like, it's a comedy line, but it feels so in character for the type of person that he is that it doesn't diminish from the horror. It's just this little joke is his way of like processing and coping with his fucking life, his whole life changing. It's such a good scene, and just like the tension of what the hell is gonna happen. Oh my god, this movie rules. It is so good. It's so good. I honestly can't imagine that any other adaptation is as good. Absolutely check out The Haunting from 1963, the original film. Just a great movie. Really happy to have caught it. Then I watched The Wasp Woman, which fucking sucks. So The Wasp Woman from 1958, a Roger Corman production. Kind of was this one of his earlier movies? I think he was making stuff before this, but this was one of his this was around the time that he started to become known as the king of B movies. And you know what? I totally thought that he was involved in some way with the original The Fly. But no. He had nothing to do with that film. He just ripped it off with The Wasp Woman. So The Wasp Woman, there's not a whole lot to talk about. It's like a 70-minute movie with a shocking amount of filler. Most of the film is padding. You could probably edit it down to a comfortable 30 minutes, and that would probably be a little roomy, if I'm being honest. The basic plot is there is a scientist named, what's his name? Zinthrop. Professor Zinthrop. And he is commissioned, he's basically supposed to be extracting royal jelly from honeybees for a cosmetics company. But he is obsessed with wasps instead. He becomes obsessed with wasps and believing that they have some kind of, the queen wasp has some kind of special properties, and that the royal jelly extracted from her, which I don't think that they make that, has some kind of something, right? There's something special about it. So like the first scene is him, like the inspector comes to check on like how the progress is going. He goes over to Zinthrop, and Zinthrop is like, hey, I'm running these experiments where I'm injecting a dog with royal jelly from a wasp, like this concoction that I've made. And the dog gets younger. The dog like literally turns into a puppy. Like I think I've discovered a youth elixir. And the inspector is like, not what I paid you for. You're fired, buddy. So Zinthrop writes a letter to the pharmaceutical company being like, no, you should believe in my work. It has these amazing rejuvenative properties that I'm discovering. You get a scene of the boardroom where they're having like a meeting about how their profits are down. And this is it's Janice Starlin of Janice Starlin Enterprises. She is the founder of this cosmetics company. And she's like, why are the profits down? And one of the members of the board explains to her that it's because she is the head of a cosmetics company and she's old and busted. Which, by the way, she's 39 in the movie. Not the actress, like the character's age is 39. Old and busted. And that they need to move towards using younger people as the face of their products. So she's really upset by this. She's mad. She catches wind of this letter that Zinthrop has written and is like, call that guy in. I want to talk to him. So he basically sells her. He takes her to his lab, this like private lab, I guess he's got, and he shows her the effects on some guinea pigs, like the de-aging process. So he injects a guinea pig with this formula, but I guess they like couldn't get a small guinea pig, so instead of becoming young, it just turns into a rat. It's the weirdest thing. It turns into like a lab mouse for some reason. It's the same color, but yeah, he like the guinea pig turns into a completely different animal, and she's like, "Oh my god, that's crazy. This really is the fountain of youth. Take as much money as you need, Professor Zinthrop." And he's like, "Oh, this is so awesome. This is awesome. This is epic style." And he starts doing work. The other members of the board are concerned that she's placing all of her trust in like a total quack, and they start investigating him. Eventually, they start doing trials with her. They do human testing on her. She's like, "Stick that shit in me, Zinthrop." And he does, and she starts, like, within a week, she starts seeing noticeable, like, improvements, like, her wrinkles are gone. Basically, they just put the actress Susan Cabot in old age makeup and then, like, take it off throughout the movie. And she's like, "This is so fucking awesome. This is so awesome. I need more." So she starts going in after hours to inject herself with more, which he does not want her to do because it could be dangerous. So she starts really juicing on this stuff. And she's doing this one evening. Zinthrop goes out, gets hit by a car, and she's like, "Where the fuck is he? Where the fuck is he?" Q. So when I talk about padding, this takes, like, everything I've just described takes like 40 minutes. It is so fucking long. There are so many scenes. Just the opening scene of Zinthrop catching some wasps is like 3 minutes long, because they decided to have 100 reaction shot, like, back and forth shots of him walking down a path and seeing the other, like, beekeeper people, and then back to him, and then back to the beekeeper guys, and then back to him, and it goes on for so long. There's just a random scene that has no purpose. It's just like, the whole scene is that there's these two secretaries at the company gossiping about things that don't tell us anything about the plot or any of the other characters. Then Zinthrop comes in. They go, "Huh, what a weirdo," and then the scene ends. That takes like 2 minutes. That scene is 2 minutes. Why is it here? It was so much pointless shit. It's just so much padding. This scene where they start looking for him is no joke. Like, another 2.5 minute at least long scene of people, like, Q, 2.5 minutes of shots of people in cars just driving around looking for this guy with, okay, someone on the soundtrack got their money's worth out of that xylophone, because the song playing during this, the score is just for, like, it's so long. I think it's supposed to sound like a breaking news thing. It just goes on. This is like one of the only movies I've ever taken my phone out during. I actually never do that. I never do that during films. The last film I can think of that I did that for was Disney's Dinosaur, which might honestly be the worst movie I've ever watched. This movie is so boring. It is so dull. This is a movie that is made for people to... It's made for teenagers to make out during, like, while they're parked in their cars at the drive-in. It is so fucking boring. And you know what? Okay, so eventually, they find him. He's, like, in a coma for a few days. When he wakes up, he's got, like, a foggy mind, foggy memory, and he's talking. So basically, he's like, she keeps gutting on the juice, and then it turns out that it has a side effect of turning her into a fucking wasp. And the effects I thought that they were just hiding it for the big reveal, but it turns out that it's just that it looks bad. The film in general looks bad. It's shot very flatly. The actual creature effects for when she transforms it's just a mask and some claws, but the mask looks bad, and it's very dark and constantly shot in low light, which means that you can never really tell what's going on or what she's even supposed to look like. And like basically this transformation comes over her, and she gets this unstoppable urge to kill and then eat her victims. So in like the last 10 minutes, you finally reach the climax where the two people who have been kind of like very skeptical are like, uh-oh, something's going on, because she's killed multiple people after hours. She's been sneaking into the building after hours to juice up with her wasp juice, and then killed people when the transformation overtakes her. So they're like, oh no, what's going on? And then there's like a very weak fight scene, and then she gets acid thrown on her and dies, and that's the movie. And I was like, man, that was lame. I couldn't see what the monster was. It only ever looked bad. The plot was boring. It's just a bad looking film. Like, literally the quality of the film used is so cheap and shitty looking. It is absolutely absurd that I'm talking about. So The Wasp Woman is from 1959. The Haunting is from 63. These movies are less than 5 years apart. And they could not look any more different from each other. The quality difference could not be any greater. The absolute canyon between them. So I go on IMDb, as I am wont to do for films like these that I watch, because I just keep a list of them, because this is like my little thing. And I give it a 4-star rating out of 10. And I'm like, yeah, The Wasp Woman kind of sucks. Also, okay, by the way, the poster lies. It's okay. 50s, 60s, like B-movie marketers invented clickbait. The original, like the poster for the movie is a giant wasp with a woman's head. But in the movie, it's literally the exact opposite. It's a woman with a wasp's head. A normal-sized woman with a wasp's head. So I was disappointed by that. I give it a 4-star rating, and I'm like, all right, well, that was kind of fun. Let me go take a walk. Let me go take a nice, refreshing walk. I go outside. I am not a block from my house when I feel this sensation on my leg. I look down, and there's a wasp embedded into my calf. And I was like, what? What the fuck? What the fuck? So first of all, a couple things. I've been stung by a bee one time. And I believe it was like, it landed on my leg, like my thigh when I was a kid. And I put my arm down on it without realizing. I didn't even know it was there. And it stung me. It's the only other time I've been stung. So generally, like, I do not have a phobia of insects, really. Like, if a bee is around me, I know that as long as I don't mess with it, as long as I just keep calm and I don't mess with it, it will, it's if you don't mess with it, it will mess with you, right? So Kat's really bad because she has a supreme insect phobia. So she sees, if a bee comes around, she's like, she's a big scaredy cat. I know that when I see one, my brain is like, okay, it's time to be calm. It's actually time to be especially calm. And then you know what? They don't mess with you. It's fine, you know? And wasps are the same way. Wasps generally don't fuck with you if you don't fuck with them. And if I see one, I just chill out, you know? So the fact that I was just walking, and I guess it like, I don't know, like I guess it collided into my leg or something like that. Just outdoors, randomly. Which is also weird because I'm kind of under the impression that most flying insects are also able to sense like movements in air currents, which is how they keep from crashing into stuff all the time. But for some reason, by total chance, this wasp just decided to sting me. Whether it was by like misunderstanding of me knocking into it or just pure evil, it decided to sting me. So I look down because I feel like an immediate stinging kind of light pain. And I see it, and at first it's like it's embedded into my leg, right? And it's got to work its way out. So my first response is, what the fuck? And then once I process what's going on, it almost became surreal. Because, I mean, obviously, I just watched The Wasp Woman, and I rated it 4 stars out of 10. And now the wasp is coming for revenge. It was so weird. It was such a weird, surreal feeling. So I let it basically unjam itself. I'm not going to kill it. I'm not going to do anything, you know. It's an animal. I think I'll be fine. And thankfully I was basically right outside my house. And I walk back, I see my dad, and I'm like, I just got stung by a wasp? And it wasn't anything that was like, it's always, I'm not going to die. It's not life-threatening. I don't have an allergy, thankfully. It almost makes me want to get tested now, because if I was... as far as I know, I don't have any severe allergies to anything. Maybe I should get tested. Just to see. Because you can be allergic to some obscure stuff. I knew people with like horse allergies. And that just seemed really weird to me. But yeah, that's a real thing. I think I am slightly allergic to pet hair in that it like agitates my sinuses. But other than that, I won't like break out into hives or anything, thankfully. So I went inside, and the way that you treat a wasp sting is you wash it out with water, like soap and water, just in case there's any, like, because it is a little perforation in your skin now. So you wash it out to make sure that it doesn't get infected. Also, potentially to wash any venom that might be near the surface. And then you basically take an ice pack, and then you just do like 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off for a while to reduce the swelling and the pain. So I was basically doing that for most of the night. I still have a little bit of itchiness. The swelling has basically gone down. But I do have a little bit of itchiness lingering in my leg. And it was just a really weird thing. Just, yeah, kind of surreal. And I can only interpret it as revenge for the Wasp Woman. I ran into a genuine tier 3 sub simp who was White Knight Wasp, who was ready to defend his queen, his literal wasp queen. And he was not happy. You fuck around with the Wasp Woman, and the army comes out. Really weird. Wasp Woman, not a good one. Not even a fun one. I love like old silly monster movies just because they're fun. This one was just boring. Disappointingly kind of dull. So if you're gonna watch any horror movie from decades ago off of this podcast, please make it The Haunting. And now finally, I would like to talk about a game that I have started recently. I'm a couple hours in. It's called Of Orcs and Men, which I am now kind of understanding is actually a sort of intentional reference to Of Mice and Men. So Of Orcs and Men, I first discovered this because I remember I was reading about like just obscure games that people like, and someone mentioned a game called a series of games called Styx. Styx, like the river Styx, as these like stealth games that were like, you know, maybe not the greatest in the genre, but hey, I really like them kind of thing. And I looked it up, and it just so happened that the Styx games, it's this series of stealth games about a little goblin guy in this like dark fantasy setting. And it is a spin-off. There's like, first of all, there's like 3 or 4 Styx games. There's way more. Like, I had never heard of this. And these are from like the last 10 years too. It's a spin-off. It's like the persona to Of Orcs and Men's Shin Megami Tensei, which only had 1 game. So if Orcs and Men, I decided I happened to also get them all in a bundle for like $5 at the exact time that I was looking them up. So I've started with Of Orcs and Men, which is not a stealth game. I guess I can explain the basic premise. This is kind of an underdog game. It feels kind of cheap in certain ways. You can feel the budget. You can feel the budget in some ways. You can also feel that they had the creators really wanted to make something cool, and for the most part that is shown through, whatever. It's apparent. It kind of feels like the little game that could. The basic premise, it takes place in a very Tolkien-esque but kind of like gritty fantasy setting. So there's like humans, there's orcs and elves and dwarves and all the classic fantasy races. The human beings have united and allied themselves with the dwarves and the elves, and they've decided that they want to expand southward. And they have engaged in a crusade, a genocidal crusade against the southern people, which are mostly orcs. And there has been a war that has raged for years at this point when the game opens, that the orcs have been losing. And there is like an inquisition that like has now been goes around and hunts for any remaining orc like militants that are still around, or just any orcs in general, so that they can either be subjugated as slaves or just killed if they resist, if they don't surrender. So obviously, you know, there's some real world parallels to this. And the main character is an orc named Arkai, or Arkael. It's one of those little things that are like, it kind of sounds like the voice director didn't get everybody on the same page about how to pronounce the main character's name. It's spelled Arkail. And I think it's supposed to be Arkai, but some people call it Arkael, which honestly could have been intentional. As someone named Tygan, it is just kind of accurate that people are just going to pronounce your name however the fuck they interpret it. So Arkai has been given, he is a member of a group called the Bloodjaws, which are one of the last holdouts of the orc resistance against the human empire. And there's only like a couple of them. There's like less than a dozen members. And they're like, basically we're going for the all or nothing. Arkai, your job is to kill the fucking emperor. You're gonna assassinate the emperor. But like first you gotta save a wizard or something. So Arkai is given like mission number 1, right? And in order to accomplish this, he is given a guide of a little goblin man named Styx, who is like an assassin, stealthy thief guy for hire. Thus begins the Of Mice and Men, but about and killing an emperor to stop a genocide. Stop a genocidal regime. And it is very like Arkai is the big strong guy who isn't dumb. He isn't Who's the big guy? Is it Lenny? Is Lenny the big guy in Of Mice and Men? I read Of Mice and Men so long ago. He's the big guy. He's not dumb. He is actually fairly like intelligent in terms of like how fast he's able to pick up information. He's just more of like a brute force. He takes the physical problem solving route first, as opposed to Styx, who is obviously a tiny guy who frequently has to talk his way out of situations or be like, hey guys, hey, hey, maybe I can do something for you. And he's got to rely on like his stealth and his speed and sneakiness and his cunning. So they kind of have these slightly clashing personalities, but they get along. They've just got slightly different gut instincts about what to do. And you essentially go through, the gameplay manifests in the form of these very linear at this point levels, with real-time with pause combat. So this is one of those games that when I say it feels like, kind of a passion project, it's like, you remember when I talked about Kunitsugami and I was like, this is the kind of game, this feels like a game that someone really wanted to make. Someone had an idea that had never been realized by any other game in a way that satisfied them, and they wanted to do it. So the combat system in this game is, I think, pretty cool. Essentially, you get into combat encounters, and you have to pause the game. I believe that there might be like there is like a default attack that both characters will do, and to like the nearest enemy. But really what you're doing is you are pressing a button like the space bar by default to slow down the game to like extremely slow speeds, slow motion. It's not like true pause, but it is like slowing down dramatically. And then you get a kind of like a weapon wheel of options between 3 different categories: an offensive, defensive, and special abilities or moves. So each character has their own set of, okay, well actually it's different. So Arkai gets offensive and defensive. Styx gets melee and ranged. And then both of them have special moves that are like rezzing your partner. Arkai has an ability to just toss sticks, which is really funny. It's stuff like that. I think like there's some healing. So it's like supportive abilities basically, or things that interact with the other character. And then you get to like assign the target of who you want the character to attack. And there is a fairly in-depth system of like damage and range, number of hits, counterattacks. There's kind of like a Dark Souls poise stat, which is, it's called stability. You have a number of attributes, and the attributes all affect like a couple different stats. There's like whole RPG system. There's like, you can level up and like get points, like attribute points to assign. You can learn new skills and level up skills to give them like one of two. Each skill has like one of two different upgrades, and you can pick one of them. There's like weapons and equipment to boost your, different stats and all that. It's got some like, RPG stuff going on. So you're like where was I? I kind of got sidetracked. So you go into combat, you pause, and then you can queue up a number, like up to 4 actions, and assign, who you want for those. So, I was talking about, okay. So there's this whole system where like there's a balance between how much damage an attack does, how fast it comes out. Basic, and like that matters because there's like an amount of startup. And you have this like stability stat, and if you get hit in the startup of an attack, you can get thrown off balance and have your attack be interrupted, and then the character will have to like, I believe the automatic behavior is just to like try to do it again, which again puts you in a long startup. There are like stuns. There are chances that you can counter. You can like block, dodge, counter, which are all like different things. And I think that they interact differently with like certain stats of different abilities. It's very in-depth. And once you've got a couple of skills for each character, like once you hit like level 3 or 4, which is pretty early in the game, suddenly like you have to start approaching situations a lot differently. So like there's a very simple combo with Sticks is he has a move that lets him kick an opponent backwards, which will momentarily stun them and interrupt them if they were in the middle of something. And then you can combo that with like tossing like a bunch of knife tosses from his ranged move pool. Arkai has multiple different ways that he can stun or enter. So he has like a big wind-up punch that has a high chance to stun the opponent. But it has a ton of startup, and you can be interrupted out of it to kind of give it, that's like the risk reward. You've also got like a weaker like triple slap move that can interrupt an opponent's move. So if an opponent has an attack with a big wind-up, and there's only like so many opponent behaviors. It's generally like there's like a couple of different move sets that enemies can have. Or do they have a sword and shield, or a spear? Some of them have crossbows. And so you kind of like learn that they have different speeds that they can attack at and different ranges. And so you have to fight them all a little bit differently. There are like a generally good combo that you can figure out with like stringing a couple like you have like one move that hits hits like 3 times and pulls a bunch of aggro. It generates a bunch of aggro to you, and then you can combo that with a move that it's like a feint, where you like do a fake out attack and then do like a big higher powered swing, which is another like high startup but high damage thing, and then like a quick attack and then like a heavy attack. That was what I figured out. And I imagine it'll get more complex. Like there's like a charge move. So like, let me just break into combat and then do my other stuff. You can figure out a bunch of different sequences and ways to approach different situations, and it changes depending on what enemy you're dealing with, which is really neat. And both characters have these fairly deep move pools that you have to take into account depending on what fight you're going into. Sticks is stealthy, so he has the additional option of going invisible, and he's able to get behind people and assassinate them. It is not like a stealth game unless you do it right in front, like in the sight line of another like enemy. You are probably not going to get found. Like there is basically, there's no like sound, like noise system. They aren't going to be like, what was that? They can be like staring across the field at a dead body and just not even notice it. So I've kind of, so what you can, I've gotten into this kind of loop of scouting ahead with Sticks, taking out as many enemies as I can without getting noticed. And then like, who's the last one? So there's like this one instance where there's a bunch of like there's like 4 guys in armor who are really tough to take down. And then there's like another 3 dudes. No, there's like 3 dudes in armor. It's some mix. There's a couple of armored up guys, and then like some other soldiers in like leather armor, like local military or whatever, local militia. And you've got to get past them, and you have to fight. So there's like 7 enemies total. And I discovered that with sticks, you can go and take out 2 of them without being noticed. But after that, anyone that you would assassinate will alert the other enemies because they're all like kind of clumped up. Most of them are clumped up. You can take out the ones on the far reaches. So, who is the best third target to alert them to? So now you have to do a bunch of like sizing up the different enemies and who's the most dangerous, who do I have the most trouble with, and then even after I discovered that, I had to reload that save multiple times because I then had to figure out what the best strategy was for actually taking all of them out. And I eventually figured out like where to stand, like where and how to bring Arkai into the fight, and who to aggro with him so that Styx wasn't getting focused down as much because he's obviously a lot more fragile. And then what moves to use to like throw them off balance. Should Arkai focus on the armored guys first, or the weaker enemies? I had Styx take out the weaker guys first, just because he can kind of glass cannon them. And then like constantly like pausing and then like having Arkai like hit another enemy with a move to aggro them, and like reassigning targets and stuff. And it might sound like I did the same combat encounter probably like 10 times, but it didn't get frustrating, just because I felt like it was a puzzle that I was figuring out. What's the best way to handle this situation? What is the combination of, what's the approach? What combination of moves gives me the best chances of making it through this? Because after each encounter, they'll just naturally, Arkai and Styx both heal up. So it's mostly like a lot of individual little combat puzzles is sort of what it feels like. At first, you're just kind of confronted with like, okay, how do I comfortably take on 4 guys? Because you are almost always outnumbered in this game, which is kind of neat. So how do I take on 4 guys? And then you get kind of comfortable with that. And then it becomes, okay, now the game is starting to throw more enemies and more complex and difficult enemies with like more armor. And there's like ability, like Styx has a move to like lower an opponent's armor and stuff like that. So, maybe I can use him for that. Enemies with different types of weapons. There are enemies who are... Oh my god, okay. So one aspect is that Arkai is also like a berserker. He has a rage bar that fills up as he takes damage. And when it maxes out, he gains a little bit of health. And then, which I guess is supposed to represent like an adrenaline rush. And he goes berserk. And he will just start attacking anything in sight, including Styx if there's no other enemies around. So there are situations where there are some enemies who are actually out of reach that you would have to snipe out with Styx's throwing daggers. Arkai goes berserk, kills all of the regular like enemies on the ground, and then starts beating up Styx and fucking throttling him. And you can't control it. You cannot control what he does in berserker mode. You can manage... He has a move that's like a big roar that I think it restores a little bit of health, and it also subtracts... It also like drains some rage. So you do get to control it, but you've got to keep track of a lot of stuff. And mind you, the game is... A lot of it is happening in real time. The pause is definitely... It is... The slowdown is definitely substantial, but it is like, time is still moving. So you kind of have to figure it out. This is a game where you save a lot. You save between every single combat encounter. And you know what? So far, it's been pretty fun. I actually quite like it. It definitely, yeah, it feels like an underdog game. Oh, hang on. So this is by a studio called Cyanide Entertainment? Cyanide SA. Apparently they did, okay, so they did the 2018 Call of Cthulhu game. They do Blood Bowl? Yeah, they do the Blood Bowl games. A lot of pro cycling manager, pro basketball manager. They do like these sports manager games. Apparently they made a Game of Thrones game also in 2012, which apparently uses a very similar combat system. I guess they developed it maybe for that. Maybe they developed it at the same time and then like used the same technology. That's kind of interesting. And then before that, they did a lot of, sports games and then random fantasy action games. They did Loki. They did Loki from 2007. Does anyone know that game? It's like a hack and slash thing. Anyway, of Orcs and Men. I can only imagine that this will end with Styx killing our Kai. Spoilers for Of Mice and Men. Pretty cool game. And just like one of these random games you've probably never heard of. I would recommend it so far. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. And with that, I'm going to draw this to a close. If you've been listening this far, thank you for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. Next video is coming along. It's in the editing process. It's pretty fun. I imagine it'll be out by like maybe the first week of next month as I'm recording this. So look forward to that. I've got a Patreon and a coffee that you can donate to. And subscribe to my other channels and stuff. Bye.